And there we go. Recording has started. And if you do have to jump off or you're interested and want to get the recording later on, I'm going to put a link to it out. We'll put it out on our office, Alabama Office of Apprenticeship Twitter, and tag the Superintendent Association and a couple of others in it so people can join. Meredith, you'll take care of the lobby at this point, letting folks in. So we appreciate you joining us this afternoon. I would ask everybody who is not David to mute your mics, and if you start lagging or having any difficulty, bandwidth wise, sometimes it helps to turn cameras off, but right now we should be okay. So by way of introduction, I'm Josh Laney. I am the director of the Alabama Office of Apprenticeship. And on this call, I have two of my rock star staff. Meredith Smith is here. She is our statewide project manager and helps to facilitate K-12 programs. Meredith's a former third grade teacher, reading coach, and reading expert extraordinaire. So she helps to translate the world of education speak into the world of apprenticeship and business speak. And then we also have Sophia Guan. Sophia is one of our most veteran project managers and has stood up programs from everything from K-12 programs, from Airbus to, everything. Sophia has a wide range of experience with establishing programs across all kinds of different occupations. So the program that we're here to talk about today is part of what I have been calling our Fat Chef initiative for a couple of years now. And so David loves it when I say that he's our first Fat Chef. So we will go into detail about that and that particular project. I realized also that we put out the announcement about this event on the same day that the governor's executive order about teacher apprenticeship came out. So we got a lot of questions and possible confusion about folks thinking that this webinar was about teacher apprenticeship. It is not directly about the teacher apprenticeship program, but once we're done talking about the Fat Chef and the IT program that we've established here, we will stick around and talk about teacher apprenticeship and answer any questions that you might have about that to the extent possible, recognizing that that is still very new. And I've got to give a report to the governor on March 31st about the plan forward with that. So a lot of it is still speculative, but we'd welcome your input as we do that planning, and be glad to have a discussion about that as well. So to get started, you all probably know David, but David, if you and Jawan will introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. I'm David Wofford. I'm the superintendent of Chickasaw City Schools. I have a background as a CTE director, a high school principal, a longtime coach. And to my right is our esteemed tech coordinator, Jawan Withers, who's also a graduate of Chickasaw City Schools. Jawan?
All right, so this is a perfect example of a grow your own model that we're going to be talking about here, because Jawan was grown in-house and is now growing his own. So I want to lay a little bit of a foundation to the kind of program that we're talking about. A lot of K-12 folks are very familiar with the concepts associated with cooperative education, internships to a degree, and other types of work-based learning. So right out of the gate, I wanted to draw the distinctions between an internship or a co-op versus an apprenticeship. And I've got a little graphic here that's part of a handbook that we have. I'm going to share my screen just for the sake of simplicity. Let's see here. Go. So you all should be seeing now that that little table. And that table represents some of the different types of work-based learning. Now, my office is specifically charged with expanding the use of registered apprenticeship and other forms of work-based learning. Now, the program we're going to talk about today is a registered apprenticeship, but we also do support these other kinds of work-based learning as part of the governor's initiative towards using work-based learning to meet our workforce needs. But I wanted to draw the distinction between particularly registered apprenticeship, which is over here on the far right-hand side, and probably the most commonly confused thing among K-12 folks when we talk about registered apprenticeship is cooperative education. The first difference is when you think about it in terms of the purpose of these two programs. Cooperative education and on-the-job learning are both programs that are run inside a K-12 school system to get a student work experience. And that's really ultimately what it's about. Now, co-op can be those jobs that we get students at McDonald's, or it could be at the flower shop, or it could be anywhere. But the point of the cooperative education is to get them paid work experience, and they learn about the world of work, and they learn about how to go to work and get along with people and wear a uniform, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's associated with some type of high school credit. Of course, they do co-ops in college and university as well. On-the-job learning is a step above that co-op experience. And really the difference between those two things is it's still paid. It's still, done through the school system. Still most likely going to be just earning a high school credit associated with that. But the big difference there is it's tied to that student's field of study. So you've got co-op and OJL that go on all the time in K-12 school systems all over the state. We're actually quite good at that in Alabama. And the State Department of Education puts out every year numbers about how many people participate, how many students have participated in co-op, how much money they've earned, and how many hours of work they did. And that is, something that we should all be proud of. But these two things are inherently different than a registered apprenticeship. If you think about it, what I said was the co-op and OJL are designed to get a student work experience. Well, a registered apprenticeship flips that. A registered apprenticeship is about getting training for an employee. So that's, if you can make that mindset shift, you begin to understand the distinction between the two. When you hire students to work during the summer and help move desks for the floor crew, or they help, install new computers across the district or whatever, those kinds of things are short-term job placements for either a defined period of time or some flexible short period of time. And it's about the kid learning to work. When you get to a registered apprenticeship, you've got a long-term opening. And we're going to talk specifically about David's example in just a second. Well, you've got a need. You've got an opening inside your school system that you need to fill. It's posted on your website. And so this gets to the point of where we call this the fat chef, skinny chef scenario. A lot of our school systems have for the past 2 or 3 years really been interested and shown keen interest in establishing registered apprenticeships for their students so that those students get into the world of work in long-term placements on a career pathway. But it's hard to tell people to do things you don't do. And it's hard to describe the experience to people that you haven't had. And so what I have been saying for the last couple of years is let's look internally first. Let's take these school systems and you go look at your job site. You look at the postings on your school system's website. If you've got postings that have been out there for 30 and 60 and 90 and 120 days that you haven't been able to fill for IT technicians or diesel mechanics or HVAC techs, you've got all those postings, and yet you're telling the employers in your community, oh, I can help you get the workforce that you need. I can train them to do the stuff you need them for, entry-level positions and all that. It's kind of hard for me to believe that you can meet my needs as an employer if your needs as an employer are going unmet. You've got direct daily access to the resource that everybody else is trying to figure out how to get into, and that is the students. That's the new pool of incoming workers. You've got them. Other organizations have to figure out, well, how can I get into the school and how can I set up interview days and how can I build relationships with students so that I can recruit them? All you've got to do is walk down the hall. So we talk about the fat chef, skinny chef idea as the fat chef eats his own cooking, right? So if you want to go out and you want to sell this concept to employers in the community, you need to be taking advantage of it yourself. So I've said that for a couple of years at a couple of ACTA conferences and maybe a summer class event and that kind of thing. And David has really taken that to heart. So I don't want to take his story. I'm going to let him tell you his story. about how we came to be in this position. But I did want to draw that distinction. Again, co-op and OJL are things you do all the time. Those students, you hire them, you're getting students work experience. But what we're discussing today, registered apprenticeship, is you've got an opening in your system that needs to be filled, and you're going to hire a student as an apprentice. They become an employee and they're there for the long term. You're not cashing them out when they graduate and going to get another set. So with that foundation laid there, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Kick over to David and Jawan. And David, I just wanted to start with asking you to talk a little bit about how you got to this position. You were describing a staff meeting situation that you had, and what brought you to the initial concept that maybe you would hire an apprentice to be an employee of your school system.
Sure, Josh, and to kind of back up, Jawan was he was an intern when he was in school working for us, and he worked himself into an assistant IT position. If we had had an apprenticeship back then, he would have been one. So he understands how that process works from doing it himself. So we're constantly talking about workforce development and staff meetings and what we're doing to provide opportunities for our students. And when Governor Ivey came out with her plan about us producing tens of thousands of workers in the next few years for the needs of business and industry in Alabama, we took it very serious. So we're constantly doing checkups on where we're at on workforce development as a system. And Jawan's in those staff meetings. And so he came to me after being at a couple AOA meetings and talking and said, I've got an idea. We've got a need and we need to fill it. And I said, so what's the need? He said, well, we're paying a certain company $80 an hour labor fees to do work that we can train our people to do in-house. So it came from a financial burden on the system to an idea of how we could save money tech-wise, but also prepare our students for the day after graduation, and really start employing them before they even leave. So that's how it came to fruition. It was born out of a need, but it also there was opportunities because AOA's got a lot of ground that they've gained in establishing these apprenticeships. So that's how we got started into it, Josh.
That's great. So you identified within your school system a particular need that you could fill. When you started thinking about the training requirements that are associated with that job that Jawan needed filled and the district needed to stop outsourcing, what did you have to do to determine, okay, what is this person going to have to be able to do this job? Can you talk a little bit about that competency development and that training outline?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely had to build a framework for what this was going to look like, what the specific skills that they would need, and the training. When they finish with the training, they'll have their CompTIA Tech 1, A+, and they become a Tech 1 at that point. So we kind of looked at what the classification would be, and we worked backward on the competencies on what they would need to get to that point. And also that's within what the needs of the district are. So it was a natural, kind of an organic thing working together in that situation. As far as the training, we're looking at a 2-day 3-day in the classroom, 2-day on the job. And then as they progress, it flips. It's 2 days in the classroom and 3 on the job that they're working. Juan, anything you want to add to that?
I don't have much to add. I just wanted to kind of highlight that it took a lot of work on the front end, I guess, partnering with the counselor, so that when we're building that student schedule, we're not putting them in a position to where they're not on track to graduate because they're having to take an extra class for the apprenticeship program. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to work with their counselors to make sure that if they had a free period where they would be able to take this class additionally, so that it wouldn't kind of interfere with their track to graduate.
Right.
So our goal was to be able to have them take a class to where they can do their their RTI, and then they can take that, and then it wouldn't kind of, I guess what I'm trying to explain is basically we don't want to have the apprenticeship interrupt their regular education.
Right. Right. So we're keeping them on track, but also it becomes a little bit of a competition too, because there's a finite amount of positions, and the students want these positions. So it gets a little bit competitive in that as well.
Good. And I heard you mention something that I know a lot of school systems are interested in, and that was the CompTIA certification. Everybody, in my previous life, I was at the State Department and dealt with the CCRIs, the career readiness indicators. And a lot of times that question comes up about, oh, I can use apprenticeship to meet the career readiness goals, right? I can check off a student, get them a career readiness indicator by going through apprenticeship. Well, if they complete the apprenticeship in high school, then yes, that is true. But I have to say that's if you've got a student who isn't able to earn a career readiness indicator in one of the other 400 ways that we have, apprenticeship's probably not the right path for them. So I'm not saying that, the credential itself is not valuable. That third-party credential, that CompTIA certification that they're going to get, has distinct value in the workforce, specifically in your organization, but then also as that student goes, finishes their apprenticeship, and it's public education, right? We don't pay them enough. So somebody's going to come steal them from us eventually once they have a skill set. But that makes them more marketable.
Wages. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sustainable wages. And this is not a gimmick to get more certifications or credit to what you're doing for how the state rates us. This is a specific thing for these students to really get to the point where they can make sustainable wages, and they're benefiting the district while they're doing that.
Right. And then specifically, Jawan, you mentioned RTI. That's the related technical instruction. So that's the coursework associated with the competencies that you're having the person do. The competency, of course, is what they have to be able to do on the job, and the RTI is what they have to know to be able to do that job. And you had to kind of outsource, or not outsource, but look outside of your existing classes, right? So once you identified those competencies, you picked additional certification work for that student to do. You didn't just keep them pigeonholed in the same biz ed class or whatever they were already in, right?
Yeah, they were pulled out of their, we offer computer science. They were pulled out of computer science, and they were put in a class. They were put in a lab where they have an instructor that monitors their progress within CompTIA. And we also have one of our mentors, which will be our IT staff, kind of monitoring their coursework within CompTIA and assisting along the way. And we've been able to take the modules from their RTI and tailor their on-the-job learning based off what they're going through in the RTI. So not only are they able to go through and review, test on it, they're also able to do the hands-on experience. So we take that module and they're hands-on and on-the-job learning for the days based off whatever module they're in CompTIA, so that they're able to apply what they're learning.
Which lines up with exactly how you would train any other employee that you brought in. You would give them the coursework or the training that they need, oversee that coursework, and then have them applying that in the job while somebody is monitoring, supervising. And you mentioned mentors just then, and I know Meredith has made this point many times, but it is critically important that probably, just like the teacher in the classroom for regular coursework, the mentor relationship here, that journey worker overseeing that apprentice, is the secret sauce. Like, we can define the program and all of that, but you've got to have a person that is able to directly engage, communicate well, and understand the needs of that young person who is your apprentice, but is also your employee. How did you go through any kind of mentor training? Did you participate in anything along those lines to prepare for that?
So in this case, our current mentor that's mentoring our student, he also went through sort of an internship with us. So during the time where we were in transitioning positions, I was able to kind of mentor him, and then he's able to take how we did our mentorship between he and I, and he was able to apply. He's now able to apply to our current mentor. And dealing with a high school student, because when he went through the mentorship, he was already a graduate, but as we transition to employing high school students, the mentorship goes beyond the on-the-job training and the RTI, because then you have to take into account the student's grades, because one of the stipulations of the mentorship, I mean, the apprenticeship is for the students to be on track to graduate.
That's right.
So we have to also be accountable for their grades. So if we have a teacher pull us to the side, hey, he's not doing so well in my class, can you assist? Then we want to make sure that we're able to kind of mentor him also in his education and not just, I mean, the apprenticeship is beneficial to the student, but it doesn't serve any good if the student isn't able to graduate.
Sure.
Right.
Of course.
The mentorship is the key too. And it's got to be a person that's relational. They have to understand that this is so much more than just job training. You're really invested in this student and you're helping them get obtain skills that they may not otherwise had. And it's not just about the job skills either. It's how to get along with people on the job. And then there's a safety aspect involved. They have to understand the OSHA standards that they're being trained on as well. But this mentor has to be a person that's patient, that allows these students to do the work and make the mistakes, and also critically think their way through the mistakes and repair what they've done. And one of the first concerns I had as superintendent was the security of everything. Are we going to open up ourselves to a high school student being able to access all of our network and all of our information? And the answer is no. These students are they're very protected and guarded on what information that they have access to. And that's part of the mentor's job too, is to monitor them on what they have access to, but also to teach them the ethics of what is right and what's wrong in the way that they handle information along the way. So we're very conscientious about making sure information is protected. And as the student grows into the position, then they earn, through competencies, they earn more opportunities to access information.
And those are the kind of employability skills that we've all been preaching about needing to teach students forever. But when it's your own employee, this is not just a student anymore that we generically want to teach employability skills to. This is our employee that we need to know has employability skills. And one of those that you mentioned, workplace ethics. That's hard to teach in a hypothetical situation. But in the real world, when this is really your employee and there's things on the line here that matter. I would just say, as an aside, that there are quite a few occupations that local school systems could be training their students to do and put them in place as apprentices. IT comes up a lot because every school system needs IT people. Almost universally, we're short of IT people, but also we have the equipment and the ability to do the training in-house without having to go outside a lot. If you want to do, we need diesel mechanics for the bus shop too, but we're going to have to outsource some of that training probably. So just with IT, I just wanted to point out that that is a really attractive way to start, because it's something you can manage almost 100% internally. And the flip side of that is it also scares the heck out of superintendents sometimes about those security issues. But if you're careful with your mentors and you make your mentor selections, and you've got people who have experience like Jawan and the other mentor that you've got who've both experienced that process themselves, they've got that training, then they know how to supervise it, how to embed those workplace ethics, and your worries are a lot less. You talked, David, about how they get more and more access as they check off competencies, but they also get more and more pay, right? Can you talk a little bit about how you established your pay scale and how that aligns to the benefit of both the apprentice and the school system?
It is a graduated pay scale, and we wanted to start lower than what we did start at, but we're in competition just like everybody else for the same workers. And you all know that there's a lot of inflated things out there. You can go to a local fast food place and make $15 an hour. That's the way it is. So we had to make ourselves competitive in this market. And we do start out at $15 an hour. It moves in the second range to $15.50, and then at the end it's $16. And now, of course, if they stay on long term with us, that salary will change as they go, the more years of experience they have. But to be honest with you, we're probably going to work ourselves out of employees. If we're training them well, someone's going to pick them up and pay them six figures to come and work. I mean, we know that, and that's the way the IT world works. And it's not necessarily about degrees either. It's about skill sets. So if they have the skill sets, they're going to make the money. And if we train them right, we probably won't be able to keep them. I'll let Juan take over and tell you how it graduates from 15 to 1550 to 16.
Yes, so it graduates based off competencies. So as a student completes a certain number of competencies, then they get that pay increase. So the reason we did the increments that we did for growth is that because we didn't want the apprentices to eventually complete enough competencies to where they're making more money than the intern. I mean, making more money than their mentor.
The mentor.
So we had to kind of tone it down a little bit on the increments, but I think it's about 23 competencies, and then they get that 50-cent increase, and then once they get to about 47, they get another increase, and then the final would be prior to them graduating or completing the program.
Cool. And just as a note about the development process, those kinds of things are what my staff will help any school system sort out. How many competencies is it? What's a good breaking point for where we can put a raise in there that keeps the apprentice moving forward, but doesn't outstrip the people who are fully trained, on the job, been there already. So we can help you sort that. We always have that, the employer always has the flexibility to set that range and work within your local school system's budget, and then also work within your local school system's pay scales. But we understand leaving room for growth too, so you get fully trained and you've checked off all the competencies, and maybe you've got now a year or so of experience under your belt. And that makes you valuable to the school system, but not necessarily more valuable than the person who's already, the one training you. So just to put that out there to set people's mind at ease that this is not like we tell you what you have to pay. Now, we do have minimum thresholds. We can't build jobs for, every school system needs C&P workers, right? You need people in your cafeteria, you need people on the line, but typically those jobs don't pay enough, and the skill level is not normally considered high enough that you are going to be able to do an apprenticeship for that. So I just want to throw that word of caution out there. Not every vacancy you have in your school system is an apprenticeable occupation, but I would just about bet we could look at your job postings for any school system and find one or two that are, and would be a good place to start. So we've talked about the pay scale. We talked about the flexible scheduling and the credentialing. When this person completes and they earn their credential, both the CompTIA certifications that you've already mentioned, but then they earn a Journey Worker certificate from my office, which is nationally portable. What's the long-term plan? And we've sort of talked about this. We expect they're going to get stolen. What's your long-term plan, though, for that particular person or this position going forward? Are you thinking we'll refill this every time it becomes vacant, or what?
I think that's what we're going to have to do, Josh. I mean, this is kind of an unending training that's going to go on, I believe. I think for the future, there'll be some upgrades to it as technology changes. We'll have to stay up with the current technology and what's going on with that. But yeah, we hope to keep this person as long as we can. And there may be more positions that open up as we expand in technology and within our system. So they'll have the basic needs. They'll have the basic competencies that we need to get them started. And hopefully we'll have positions that we can keep them in. But if not, we're going to continue the training. And we want to make sure that business and industry partners are involved in what we're doing, so that we can not just supply the needs we have, but also that we can supply the needs they have.
And this is a need and demand driven thing. So in our previous conversations, David, you talked about, we're starting small and plan to keep this small because we don't need 100 of these students, right? We need one or two to fill these particular occupations and maintain the quality of the program. You've described the flexible scheduling that is required. The apprentice is not here right now because they're sitting in math class. So we aren't prioritizing the work over the education, but it does take that intentional detailed scheduling and thought process early on. Your long-term plans for apprenticeship, David, have you got any other thoughts about expanding to other occupations, or how you might market apprenticeship now that you've had this experience out to employers?
Definitely, Josh. I think the most important thing for us right now is to do this with fidelity. We want to make sure that we keep this in the confines of what we're capable of doing well. We want to make sure that this first apprenticeship model that we do as well, and building the construct of it too, we feel like we can take that model and apply it to other needs that the district has. After we've evaluated what's been good, what's went wrong, what we need to improve. So this is kind of the trial model for us to figure out how we can do it better, and if we can transfer it to other fields, which we think we can. We think this is an excellent model that we can transfer to some other fields. Of course, the teaching model that we've been talking about, everyone's talking about that because we all need teachers. There's no doubt about that. But this model is important to us, that it's done well, and that we move forward, and then we see how we can transfer it later.
You mentioned learning not only from what worked well, but from what messed up. And we didn't talk about this in our pre-game interview, but are there any lessons learned, like where you would say, hey, watch out, don't try that. This didn't work. Anything that you would recommend that folks avoid?
Juwan's got a few, but I'm going to tell you, we started out with 2. We got 1 right now. So there's going to be kids that this is not for. Students will start off, some will stay with it, some won't. So you kind of weeds people out as you go. The one other thing that we figured out too is that the kids are a lot more capable than we give them credit for. You're wondering, can they do this? They absolutely can. And they're able to do more things than what we probably gave them credit for. There's more interest than we thought there would be when we initially started. Now, Jawan's he's got some pitfalls too to share with you.
Yeah, I would say the biggest pitfall I found so far is that whenever you hire an apprentice, and you kind of communicate that to teachers and staff, you're letting them know, hey, we're bringing this apprentice in, he's going to be additional IT support. You have to be able to draw that line where teachers understand that just because you have an IT apprentice in your classroom, they're not available for tech support. During class.
Oh.
It's never,
That's good.
I think just communicating with teachers and staff that it's not okay to pull an apprentice out of class to assist with a broken printer. Or it's not okay for, we want to make sure that we're following the ticket system.
Still got to use the ticket system.
Because he has set hours where he works, and he's not on the clock during the day, during school time. So we want to make sure that the teachers and staff understand that just because he's in your class, or just because an apprentice is in your class, they're not available for it, because their education comes first.
That's a good one. It makes total sense, but it hadn't even occurred to me that folks would say, oh yeah, we got that IT apprentice, let me go grab him. And he's in the middle of trying to learn chemistry right now. So yeah, that's a good point, Juwan.
The teacher will email and say, hey, I asked the apprentice to help me with something, and he wouldn't. He was doing his math test, well.
Yeah, he sure was. Well, that's a good one. Thank you. So we have a few minutes, and we only have, I don't know, a few, not a tremendous number of people on the line. I want to open it up for a few minutes of questions about this model. Yeah, David. Yes.
I would like to say one thing too that we haven't covered. The AOA apprenticeship model is not as difficult as you think it might be. Josh, Meredith, Sophia, they have made this an easy transition for us. They provide you the support that you need. They answer the questions that you need. And you're thinking that it's really this massive thing that you're going to do. It's not as massive as it seems. It's very doable. They make it an easy process to do. So I give you guys a lot of credit for that. We couldn't have done it without you, but you've also made this so much easier for us to do than we thought it would be.
Well, thank you. That's Meredith and Sophia doing all of that. I just do all the talking. So, all right. Are there any questions from our audience?
Yes, can you tell me a little bit about the selection process? Like selecting who actually gets to participate?
Well, I know Juwan will be better at answering this question, but I think some of the computer science teachers have helped identify some of those students that had, some remarkable results in their class. But then we're in the schools every day. It's a small system. So we get contact with a lot of students, and Juwan's over there all the time, and so is tech assistants. So there's kind of a natural gravitation to them from some students, which has made it a little bit easier. I'll let you pick up from there.
Definitely. So when we kind of proposed the idea of starting an IT apprenticeship, we utilized the monitors in our hallways, and we were able to post an ad, kind of an opening. We're seeking apprenticeship, IT apprentice, and if you're interested, then stop by our technology office. And we had a few students stop by and mention that they were interested, but I also had my team. They were able to recommend a few students that they thought would be great for the position, and then once we went through the interview process, we were able to select 2 students, and we're continuing with one of those students.
And the selection procedures are actually defined as part of your apprenticeship paperwork. So you'll go through and tell us how you want to select them. And a lot of it has to do with how you hire people in your district. So whatever your normal HR processes are, you're pretty much going to apply those same normal HR processes. If it means you got to get board approval for a new pay scale, then you have to do that in advance, the same as you would for any other job that you were bringing on.
Thank you.
It's a great opportunity for them to experience the interview process too as they go through it, which is some of the soft skills that we're teaching as well. But we did have to board approve this pay scale. So.
All right. Anybody else?
David, the evaluation process, is that a process that your district develops to evaluate how effective it is, or is that given to you?
You broke up on that question, Jennifer. Could you restate it?
Sure. Earlier you mentioned about evaluating the process, how effective it is. Is that something that your district, do you have a system in place to evaluate how effective it is?
Juwan, do we have anything on that?
Evaluating the actual apprenticeship program or the
competency.
competencies?
We have the competency model that, that definitely evaluates where they're at. As far as the success of the model, I'm not sure we have all the questions yet, but we definitely will be monitoring it along the way. And as we develop some type of evaluation process for the effectiveness, we'll be happy to share that with everybody.
Thank you.
Good.
Josh,
Yes, ma'am.
can you hear me?
Everybody reaching for the mute button all at once there. Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tell me, so are there other districts who have adopted this model? That's my first question. And then secondly, what other areas do you foresee being suitable for the apprenticeship?
Great question. So the Dallas County Selma City Schools was our first. They did a joint apprenticeship, but they weren't hiring the students internally. They had outside employers, and their career tech center was is, I think, still actively, but was at least at the time they established it, providing the training through, it was an automotive tech and auto body programs. So they created the 2 school systems jointly, signed up and became sponsors, and then used in-house training and a third-party employer. We don't have any others who are currently hiring in-house like David is doing. And that's exactly why we wanted to highlight it, because we think it's such a great opportunity. Part B of your question was what other occupations? Is that is that right? Yeah. So a lot of that depends on what you have the need for, first of all, and then the ability to train. So if you want to keep all of your training in-house, then you've got to assess, well, what do we have the ability to train here? You could also outsource it. Of course, technical dual enrollment is available at no cost to our students. So the opportunity, I'll keep sticking with diesel mechanics. I don't know why right now I'm thinking about buses, but everybody needs diesel mechanics. But most school systems don't have, even in the best CTE programs, they don't have a complete diesel mechanics training program available to them in-house. But it would be a perfect opportunity to hire that student on while they're in school, use your automotive program if you have it, or go ahead and dual enroll that student at the one of the community colleges, get them started in diesel mechanics. The trick there is if you outsource that related instruction, especially for something that lasts longer than the time that they're students with you, you have to be sure and think about they're not just my students anymore. They're my apprentices. They're my employees. I'm responsible for their training. Even after they graduate, I'm still responsible for their training. So in the Dallas County Summit City example, a junior or senior gets into that, and John Brown Automotive Program, automotive company hires them. Well, that one is longer. It takes longer to complete than the time the student will be in high school. So the high school has still got to keep up with their training outline, their OJL, their progress, because they're the sponsor of that apprentice. So it's demand driven. You start with, let's look at what are all the occupations that you could potentially, where you've got gaps. Then let's look at where can we get the related instruction that goes with that and make a determination of, is this a good fit? Or maybe you're going to hire them, you'll be the employer in the community college or one of the universities, or somebody else is actually the sponsor and the RTI provider.
Thank you. And also, has this been mostly, I guess, with the Dallas County model and with you, David, has this been mostly just juniors and seniors, or what's like the age ranges?
Well, the law says that you can be an apprentice as early as 16 years old. And a lot of that just has to do with the particular occupation, so what you want them to do, their level of maturity, the level of training that would be required to go along with it. We don't have a giant list to pull from here. We're talking about two examples. So in both of those, it's mostly it's juniors and seniors that we're talking about. I would say, just to draw a distinction here between the way we're doing this and if you go and start Googling youth apprenticeship, across the country, you will find that the definition of youth apprenticeship is widely, I was going to say abused, but it's not consistent. There are a lot of states that will say, oh, we have, thousands of youth apprentices. But what they've done is they've created a junior mint Mickey Mouse version of an apprenticeship that is what we would call co-op or on-the-job learning. They don't have any intention of that student staying in that job long term. They're just relabeling something that they've always done. In fact, the White House has created and reinstated the advisory council for apprenticeship. And just about 3 weeks ago, they met in Denver, and I attended and participated. And the entire goal is to come up with a national definition of youth apprenticeship. So for us in the state of Alabama, youth apprenticeship is an apprenticeship that you put a youth into. We don't water it down just so we can call it that.
We stick to juniors and seniors in our program, and a lot of it has to do with the level of the coursework as well. So in the best scenario, you would have students taking, introductory level courses in the 10th grade, and you start marketing the concept to them. You start doing some interviews junior year, maybe pick them up junior year and let them co-op a little bit with you, test them out. And then by end of junior year, now you're ready to cherry pick the absolute best out of that group and make them into your 1 or 2 long-term employees, and you continue that training. So you're not eliminating the co-op positions that
that have become crucial for a lot of school systems to fulfill their workforce needs. I depended on co-op positions to do a lot of stuff, especially during the summers. It puts money in the kids' pocket and it gets them work experience, even if that's not the one that you wind up picking up for the long haul and making them your long-term employee. But you started in the 10th, familiarize them with the concept, put them on co-op junior year, hire them senior year, and it's a really good model. Great. Anybody else before we shift gears momentarily?
The only other occupation I can think of that school systems have talked about, and you touched on this a little, is like facilities maintenance, HVAC technician, things like that. But a lot of times, like you said, the related instruction would have to be dual enrollment with a community college for HVAC or something like that. And one school system was looking at like a general building maintenance who kind of knew a little bit about all of those things. So, just different things we can explore like that.
Ultimately, we just started looking at what jobs do you have open in the system. That's where that whole search process starts, and then we go from there. All right. Any other questions about the Fat Chef program? David loves it when I call him the Fat Chef. All right. So let's talk about teacher apprenticeship then, just for a minute. I will preface this again by saying that the governor put out her executive order and indicated that my office and the State Department should be working together to create a teacher apprenticeship, and we owe her a report by the end of March outlining that program. A tremendous amount of background research has been done. There are states that you will see around that say they have teacher apprenticeship programs. To greater or lesser extent, some of those are not what we would consider apprenticeship programs. Some are what we would call residencies. So basically, you already have to get your degree and then you get into a classroom, and it's more of our traditional mentoring like we've thought about for a long time, where we try to mentor them after they get in the classroom to keep from losing them. And there's not a thing in the world wrong with mentorship programs, post degree. But what we're looking at is ways that we can open up a pipeline to get people into the classroom more quickly, but also to get people into the classroom with greater experience. So the sneak preview, and I'll just one more disclaimer: all of this is still very much in the works. So if it's different the next time we talk, don't throw rocks at me. The idea that we're going with is for you to look at incumbent workers. So teachers' aides, parapros, people that you already know are invested in working in your school system and have an interest in education. Most of our teachers' aides and parapros nowadays have associate's degrees, or a lot of school systems have, you have an associate or X number of hours of college credit that would be equivalent to that. We're looking specifically at that group. Some states have gone way off and said, oh, we're going to do teacher apprenticeships and we're going to do them with youth. Well, I was a high school principal for a little bit and ran a career tech center and all of that. And there's not a chance in the world that I'm going to bring that senior that was dating that kid last year and put him back in front of that classroom next year. It just ain't happening. From just a, common sense standpoint, that doesn't seem to work to me. But then on top of that, so many students enter education prep programs, and their first and second year, they find out they want to do something else. So we're not really interested in investing a whole lot of money and effort and energy when that retention in the teacher ed program is not super high at this point. So we're looking at incumbent workers for this pilot who are teachers' aides, parapros, that the local school system has said, yeah, this person would make a great teacher. I would love to upskill them. And the idea is that they would have to be able to enter into an ed prep program. And this is spelled out in the executive order. They'd have to be able to get into an ed prep program at the junior year level. So that's the point. Of course, those of you who did traditional ed prep programs, that's where you really start taking all your methods courses and the things where you learn how to be a teacher. You've done your English 101 and your basic maths and all of that. Normal teacher prep program, you've got an internship during your last semester. And what we're proposing is that you take that internship, you stop calling it internship, it's apprenticeship, and we move it to the junior year, and it runs all year long. Same activities you would normally do during an internship. You're co-teaching, you're planning lessons with your mentor teacher, you're in the room with a master teacher, characteristics of master teacher to be defined, but somebody who is vetted by the school system and said that, yeah, this is the person that I want supervising my upcoming teachers. You'll be in there with them all year long. It's a paid position. You'd make some fraction of a regular teacher salary greater than what you were making as a parapro, but graduated up to the point of becoming a fully certified teacher. Spend that whole year in the classroom with another teacher, co-teaching, writing lessons, all of that kind of stuff. And then senior year, you become the teacher of record. You get your own classroom. So now I'm in the classroom a year faster, but I'm not just there a year faster. I've got a year of classroom experience under my belt as a apprentice. And State Department of Ed has indicated that they would be willing to follow the model that we did with our Alabama Board of Nursing and create a teacher apprentice license. So that would be good for that period of time, the junior and senior year. And during that senior year, of course, you've got your own classroom. So the school system is able to use a regular FTE. So this kind of goes back to what we were just saying about what jobs would you fill. You got to look for what openings you have. This isn't a program where we put people in it and cycle them out and then they're gone. We only hire a teacher apprentice where we've got an opening. So that was the reason that in the executive order, the governor specified, one, we need to focus and start in one particular area, but we're starting with secondary teachers who are core subject areas. So secondary, high school, math, science, English, social studies teachers with a focus on any area that has documented teacher shortages, which is pretty much every school system in the state has documented teacher shortages at this point. So that's generally the outline. You would co-teach junior year. Of course, you're taking coursework. Speaking of the coursework, since normally that last semester, you're only doing your internship, and now we've spread that out over your whole junior year. Well, now you've got 4 semesters over which to spread your 2 years of coursework. So it lightens that course load a little bit for that teacher apprentice because they're working full time and taking classes full time. And then, of course, they could also potentially take a few classes during the summer to lighten their load even further. So that's the really broad brush, outline as it exists. There are a lot of details to be worked out. The competency model, it will be a competency-based program, and we've got every single example from every state who is running a teacher apprenticeship. And given those, the State Department is working on the initial draft set of competencies right now. Those will be ready very soon. We have communicated with the State Superintendents Association and class and are going to convene a working group of active principals and superintendents to vet those competencies because this is just like every other apprenticeship. This is employer driven. So the employers are going to be the one that say, yeah, this is what you have to be able to do in a classroom. And then we'll work with all of our ed prep programs, show them the competencies that have been developed, and then let every one of them essentially put their best offer on the table. Of course, it just seems like it goes without saying, but the coursework will have to be available, online, weekends, nights, that kind of stuff. The schools that are used to working with working adults are going to be positioned well to do this, but we're going to give every ed prep program the option to put their options, put their offering on the table. And then it'll be up to the school system. Yeah, I've got this parapro. They're an absolute rock star. I wish I could make them into a teacher. They can't quit their job and go back to full-time school. So here's how we can give them that opportunity to upskill. So that's I think that's about as much detail as I can give right now, but I'd be glad to answer any clarifying questions if there are any. Okay, good. Well, I appreciate those of you who were able to join us today. If you talk to your peers and they had some kind of technical difficulty, please let me know what that is so that we can do better next time. I had 20 people tell me they were going to join, and we don't have 20 people here. So we're glad that you made it, and hope that you found it useful. The recording will be available pretty soon. I will put that back on my Twitter, which is at Laney Works. And then also on our Alabama Office of Apprenticeship, we'll put up a link to that. So anybody who's interested in viewing the recording or sharing the recording can go and find it there. Well, Meredith, Sophia, David, any closing comments or thoughts that I've left off? Joanne?
I will say that majority of the IT staff in the state is at cybersecurity training in Montgomery today and yesterday. So
Oh,
that could be
okay.
the reason.
Could be, yeah. Well, everybody's busy all the time, right? So scheduling conflicts happen. Awesome.
Sophia, Meredith, thank y'all for all your help in getting this going.
All right. Well, with that, we will sign off, and we hope to see you soon. Oh, I forgot one other thing. Meredith, you were going to let me get away without sharing the save the date. There is a work-based learning conference that will be held May the 3rd through the 5th in Mobile. Here is the save the date for it. You can do a little screen capture of that or check us out on our Twitter page. If you want to find more details about all kinds of work-based learning and talent retention, we are partnering with the Fuel Alabama initiative from EDPA this year. So they have a mandate from the governor to talk about how to keep the talent that we train in Alabama, or to bring it back to Alabama if it has left. And so we just thought that was a natural fit for our work as it feeds right into theirs. If you want to learn more about job shadowing, we've got an excellent statewide winner of job shadowing that's going to be there from Dothan, and all kinds of apprenticeship programs that you can learn from. We highly encourage you to pencil that in on your calendar and follow us on Twitter. Be on the lookout for emails and all of that kind of stuff to be able to start registering for that very soon. All right, now I think that's everything I was supposed to cover. Fabulous. Okay, well then y'all have a great day, and we will be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good, Meredith.
Y'all too.